The word philosophy itself originated in ancient Greece. Philosophia, the Greek word, meaning the love of wisdom. Philein means to love, and Sophia means to wisdom. The study of philosophical inquiry is meditation on the essence of our fundamental problems, such as ethics, morality, value, and reason. Philosophy deals heavily in arguments, criticism, discussion, and analysis. The very idea of philosophy and analysis of values and rationality was birthed with Parmenides, the forefather of inquiry and philosophy. Parmenides went on the quest for rational understanding of the fundamental kind, and showed others to the nature of comprehension, including other classic philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Fine philosophers, them. These men are the primary focus of our studies, and through them we will reach a conclusion to our curiosities. Socrates was the first of the famous Athenian Greek philosophers to emerge, and is most famous for his incredibly stringent and shrewd method of analysis, the Socratic method. Socrates encouraged such notions, such as self-development and improvement over material wealth and personal wealth, radical ideas in times of kings, nobility, division of class, and inequality. Socrates was so devout in his beliefs that when he was forced to choose between relinquishing his beliefs or death by the Athenian government, he chose death without hesitation. Socrates was an incredibly wise, knowledgeable, and profound being who was a hit at parties. Socrates studied ethics, reason, morality, and political philosophies, and contributed many key ideals in all of these Western attributes. Strangely enough, all of Socrates' records are written by his contemporaries and scholars. He recorded none of his philosophies or concept. Most notable, of course, is his very categorical technique of distinguishing the nature of ideas and arguments. He would break down everything into more simple questions and assume absolutely nothing in his course to distill an answer to questions. This method has been adopted in the root of major fields of study, such as mathematics and science. Socrates contributed many things to the development of the future, but this method of inquiry was easily the most important. Socrates was pivotal in the development of Western philosophy, and is quite deservedly earned the unofficial title of the father of Western thinking. However, he never actually claimed to be wise, only to understand the path of a lover of wisdom that must take in pursuing it. This resonates in Socrates' famous quote, "I only know that I know nothing," a comment on the limit to his knowledge due to his belief that he was ignorant. Fascinating.
Oh, Mr. Socrates, could you please tell me about the Athenian government sentencing you to death?
Oh, well, the Athenian government, yes, the Athenian government and I had a fair few disputes in our time, but the worst one was when I was allegedly corrupting the minds of the youth, and that was a dastardly case. They put me to death. They told me to drink some poison, and I just said, well, I'll take the poison because, I wasn't corrupting these kids' minds. I'm sure I'm allowed to exercise. I don't see why I'd have to die when I was a soldier. I was a soldier, I served the Athenian government with great distinction. I contributed greatly to the world of philosophy, but they still put me to death. I don't know, the experience just left me rather bitter.
Oh, thank you very much there, sir.
Plato was the second of the great Athenian philosophers, born sometime between 429 and 423 BCE, into an aristocratic of a high family. He was known to be a sophisticated writer. This is evident in his Socratic dialogues. Plato has over 36 dialogues and 13 letters ascribed to him. These dialogues have been used to teach a wide range of subjects, such as philosophy, logic, ethics, rhetoric, religion, and mathematics. These subjects were the main areas of Plato's studies. It is known to us that Plato was a student of the great philosopher Socrates. However, the precise relationship remains an area of contention among scholars. Plato makes it clear in his Apology to Socrates that he was a devoted young follower of the Socrates. Plato developed such distinct areas of philosophy as epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, and aesthetics. His deep influence on Western philosophy is asserted in the famous remark of Alfred North Whitehead. The safest characterization of the European philosophical tradition is that it consists of a series of footnotes to Plato. He was also the prototypical political philosopher whose ideas had a profound impact on subsequent political theory. His greatest impact was Aristotle, but he influenced Western political thought in many ways. The Academy, the school he founded in 355 BCE, became the model for other schools of higher learning and later for European universities.
Mr. Potter, Mr. Plato, do you really think that philosopher kings are the best way to rule a government?
Until there is a philosopher king, there is no government adequate enough to lead men of all kinds. It is only people of wisdom who should be the highest power of the city-state. Thank you.
Plato's philosophical views had many societal implications, especially on the idea of an ideal state of government. There is some discrepancy between his later and earlier views. Some of the most famous doctrines are contained in the Republic during his middle period, as well as in the Laws and the Statesman. It is known that Plato was anti-democracy. He believed in a philosopher king to rule, and with democracy giving the opportunity for less educated individual to rule, Plato did not agree. According to Plato's model, the principles of Athenian democracy, as it exists in this day, are rejected as only a few are fit to rule. Instead of rhetoric and persuasion, Plato says reason and wisdom should govern. As Plato puts it, until philosophers rule as kings, or those who are now called kings, and leading men genuinely and adequately philosophize, that is, until political power and philosophy entirely coincide, while the many natures who at present pursue either one exclusively are forcibly prevented from doing so, cities will have no rest from evil, nor, I think, would the human race.
Mr. Plato, could you give us an excerpt from?
Don't you have a hobby or something?
No.
Something with your life.
Can you give us an excerpt from the Republic?
Okay, follow me. I'll read something from the Republic. Okay? I read this today. Until philosophers rule as kings, or those who are not called kings, and leading men genuinely and adequately philosophize, that is, until political power and philosophy entirely coincide, while the many natures who at present pursue either one exclusively are forcibly prevented from doing so. Cities will have no rest from evils, nor, I think, will the human race.
Plato describes his philosopher kings as those who love the sight of truth, Republic, 475 C, and supports the idea with the analogy of a captain and his ship, or a doctor and his medicine. According to him, sailing and health are not things that everyone is qualified to practice by nature. A large part of the Republic then addresses how the educational system should be set up to produce these philosopher kings. Perhaps one of the most famous of Plato's work is his allegory of the cave. This is mentioned in one of his Socratic dialogues. The idea came from Socrates' idea that reality is unavailable to those who use the senses, is what puts him at odds with the common man and with the common sense. Socrates says that he who sees with his eyes is blind, and this idea is most famously captured in his allegory of the cave, and more explicitly in his description of the divided line. The allegory of the cave is a paradoxical analogy, wherein Socrates argues that the invisible world is the most intelligible, and that the visible world is the least knowable and the most obscure. Socrates says in the Republic that people who take the sunlit world of the senses to be good and real are living pitifully in a den of evil and ignorance. Socrates admits that few climb out of the den, or cave of ignorance, and those who do not only have a terrible struggle to attain the heights, but then when they go back down for a visit or to help other people up, they find themselves subjects of scorn and ridicule.
How can one possibly sum up all of Aristotle's accolades and influence when it spans all corners of the world in all people and ages past? In penning his progressive installment of ideas, he sought out not just to explore the harmonious and minute details and the many facets of science, philosophy, and art, but to present the world with hitherto unknown principles that stand to this day. His undying lust for arrangement, his seismic attention to detail and chilling efficiency led him to extensively coop up the world of antiquity with encyclopedias of knowledge. As a figure for learning and yearning for it, he is uncontested, and to read his writings are to inhabit one of the greatest minds of all time. One of his books, The Athenian Constitution, has doubtless influenced the pure democratic state that we still strive for in today's society. Aristotle believed that the polis, the city-state, exists by nature, and that man is a political animal, an animal suitable for the polis. Nature does nothing without a purpose, so that the works of nature can be analysed and explained, and that human and political phenomena are works of nature, which can be analysed and explained like any others. Which essentially means that, like tracking animals and analysing them, we can do the same with political systems and their effectiveness. Aristotle was also a firm believer into the theoretic of drama and poetry, and his impact has since been felt to this day and age in people like William Shakespeare. He published Poetics, a book devoted and described the principles of both comedy and character. For tragedy, he said that it is composed on 6 elements: plot structure, character, style, thought, spectacle, and lyrical poetry. Nearly everything, down to structure and vocabulary, in drama and poetry, was vastly swayed from Aristotle's writings. Aristotle's writings were the first to create a comprehensive system of Western philosophy, encompassing ethics, aesthetics, logic, science, politics, and metaphysics. In every sense, he was the first. Aristotle's views on the physical sciences profoundly shaped medieval scholarship, and their influence extended well into the Renaissance, although they were ultimately replaced by Newtonian physics. In the zoological sciences, some of his observations were confirmed to be accurate only in the 19th century. His works contain the earliest known formal study of logic, which is incorporated in the late 19th century into modern formal logic. Islamic and Arabic scholars referred to Aristotle as the first teacher, and saw him as a founding father of science, not just for his contributions, which are of course measureless, but for his principles and order. He was the one to institute what we now call the science methodology. Basically, even ornithological studies were pursued by Aristotle and this school, and calling him just a philosopher is like calling the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony composition. It tells a criminally bare story. Here we can see that Aristotle was truly a polymath and an overextension of the word, so much so that a certain Brian McGee said that it is doubtful whether any human being has ever known as much as he did.
Mr. Socrates, would you mind summarizing your contemporaries? What were their effects on the world, Plato and Aristotle?
Well, I was the forefather, really. I came first. I did more the idealism stuff, and I focused on acknowledging and encouraging free thinking, while Plato and Aristotle were more radical, a bit more political than I was. So you can see in the allegory of the cave that Plato was out there, and I commend that. But yes, he also recorded most of my dialogues, and I'm very grateful for that. Aristotle certainly, definitely more romantic than the three of us. He contributed to poetry and drama in a very significant way. So there's definitely a large influence felt in the modern world today from all philosophers, being whether political, romantic, or just somewhat nonsensical.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Socrates was he's the forefather of the philosophers. I'm a great fan, obviously a student of his writings. He was much more idealistic. He was very profound. People did not like him towards the end of his life, and he eventually sentenced to death. Aristotle, he was another one. He was multifaceted. He had many aspects to his philosophy: drama, the nature, the politics. He was the influence of Alexander the Great. I think all three of us, we've influenced the world quite a lot, and there's one to tell me otherwise.
Not today. Thank you very much, Plato. Yeah.